ABC News presents Political Spirit of '76. This is the final chapter of this bicentennial election year. Tonight from ABC News Election Center in New York, the results. Election night.
Good evening. I'm Harry Reasoner at ABC Election Headquarters. With me are Barbara Walters and Howard K. Smith, and we'll be here for as long as it takes to determine exactly what happened tonight.
It's 7 o'clock in the morning in southern Georgia, and here comes Jimmy Carter, the hardest working, the fastest moving, and for the moment at least, the most newsworthy politician in the United States. This week the betting is that this summer Democrats will choose Jimmy Carter as their candidate in the November presidential election. 5 weeks ago, only 4% of Americans knew who Jimmy Carter was, and given the man's name and origins here in the Deep South, the others could be forgiven for thinking him a country and western singer.
Seeing what to think of you, you're obviously a very popular man in this town.
Well, I hope so. I've been here a long time. As a matter of fact, right here where we're standing is where my ancestors farmed when they first came down here to Georgia.
I didn't realize this area was quite so interesting historically. I didn't know, for example, that Andersonville was close to here.
It's about 12 miles from here. And this is where Lindbergh bought his first airplane. Right
that I've also found on this very field.
Yes, and on this very field is where my parents and grandparents had their farm.
Jimmy Carter has definitely hit the big time, and this week at least, his momentum looks unstoppable. Jimmy Carter was born 51 years ago in the farming hamlet of Plains, the son of a peanut farmer who did well. He was in the middle of a successful career as a naval officer, specializing in nuclear submarines, when his father's death brought him back to Plains to take over and rapidly expand the family's wholesale peanut business. Carter's small-town origins, his image as a farm boy who made good, are heavily exploited in his campaign commercials.
Sunday school teacher and a former governor.
My folks have been farmers in Georgia for more than 200 years, and we've been living around here for 150 years.
The Carter family rose from its humble origins to dominate Plains in politics and in business. This is the source of Jimmy Carter's wealth, a factory that buys peanuts from local farmers, shells and grades them, and then sells them to manufacturers. The biggest peanut butter factory in the United States is just down the road. Across the road, Jimmy's younger brother Billy runs one of the 2 gas stations in Plains. This is a tough town in a tough part of the country. You don't mess around with the Plains people, and you don't mess around with their favorite son.
I don't know why people over the United States think somebody from the South can't be president of the United States. We're just as smart as anybody else in this great country we have.
I'll never tell a lie. I'll never make a misleading statement. I'll never betray the confidence that any of you has in me. and I will never avoid a controversial issue.
Jimmy Carter's 78-year-old mother's a tough lady. When she was 67, she went to India with the Peace Corps. Normally, she campaigns for her son, but this year she's staying at home with his daughter.
One with the yellow sweater, and don't go near her because she smells bad. I said, Amy, what in the world? They caught some fish, and they've been there, and they're playing with those fish. She has fish all over. I have to let her take a bath before I can take her to town.
This is Jimmy Carter's church. The former governor is a Bible-pounding Baptist. He once preached in churches throughout the South, and his political speeches had a revivalist flavor until his mother told him to take God and the Bible out of his campaign. Carter wanted blacks admitted to this church. The congregation voted on it, and members of the Carter family were the only people in favor. But Carter didn't leave this church and go literally across the tracks to the Black Baptist Church. Given the still rigid social and economic divisions in the South, Carter would feel uncomfortable as a member of this congregation. Which doesn't mean, nevertheless, the black people in this now integrated community are not enthusiastic about Jimmy Carter, the politician, and Jimmy Carter, the man. They are. And here we come to Carter's greatest strength, his ability to win support among the poor and middle-class blacks in the North as well as the South. He did it in Illinois 6 days ago and in Florida 2 weeks ago. It's a state of affairs that perplexes those liberal Democrats who assume that blacks won't support a white ex-governor of a southern state.
I believe people in this country are looking for a candidate for president who can form an intimate relationship between myself and you now and maintain that closeness between the center of our government and the people of this country after I'm in the White House next January.
There's a change that's come over America, a change that's great to see.
President Ford has restored my faith in the United States government.
Ford makes me feel like America's going in the right direction.
I'm feeling good about America, and I feel it everywhere I go. I'm feeling good about America, and I feel you ought to know.
Yes, Ford has made me feel proud to be an American. I think he's done a wonderful job for America.
I'm feeling good about America. I'm feeling good about me. There's a change.
I think that's one thing. I think the world is more at peace.
The economy is picking up.
We're living here in peace again. We're going back to work again. It's better than it used to be. I'm feeling good about America, and I feel it everywhere I go.
He came on the scene when it was at a very low ebb, and I think that we've come a far way.
I don't think anybody could have done any better.
He's restored faith in the American people.
I'm feeling good about America. I'm feeling good about me.
There is a change that's come over America. You see it with our elderly. You see it with our young. You see it in our factories. You see it on our farms. And how long has it been since we've seen it on our college campuses? The people believe in their president again. And they know that nothing will deter this strong and decent man from honoring the people's trust.
(1976). Across our land, a new beginning is underway, led by a man whose roots are founded in the American tradition.
In the midst of Western New York's support for a Humphrey candidacy, Carter met behind closed doors with Buffalo Mayor Mikowski. Erie County Party Chairman Joseph Krangel dropped in, although Humphrey was not discussed. At a press conference, Carter had strong comments about Krangel's control of delegate slates.
Senator, Mr. Krangel is such a political boss. He has been the state party chairman in the past. He happens to be a close personal friend of mine, by the way. But I think that the control of the electoral process by even very popular people like Mr. Krangel is a thing to which I have a deep objection. What I would like to see done in the future is the artificial obstacles and the complicated mechanisms removed to permit anyone who wants to run for president to put their name on the ballot, and then to let any voter go and decide whom they want to be their president, without all the intermediate obstacles that have been created by Mr. Krangel and others like him who have been in strong positions of leadership in the party.
After the press conference, Carter was confronted in the hallway by actor Cliff Robertson, a Udall supporter. Carter arrived in North Tonawanda for the official opening of the campaign headquarters for that community, complete with ribbon cutting and an embrace for a baby. He met with local residents at the Packet Inn to take questions before an evening fundraiser in Buffalo. After that, Carter took off for Atlanta.
Ask me every day, how can you stand for your husband to be in politics and everybody know everything you do? And I just tell them that we were born and raised and still live in Plains, Georgia. It has a population of 683, and everybody has always known everything I did. And Jimmy has never had any hint of scandal in his personal or his public life. I really believe he can restore that honesty, integrity, openness, confidence in government that we so sorely need in our country today. I think he'll be a great president.
I have a vision of America, a vision that has grown and ripened as I've traveled and talked and listened and learned and gotten to know the people of this country. I see an America poised not only at the beginning of a new century, but at the brink of a long new era of more effective and efficient and sensitive and competent government. I see an America that has turned away from scandals and corruption. I see an American president who governs with vigor and with vision and affirmative leadership A president who is not isolated from our people, but a president who feels your pain and who shares your dreams. I see an America on the move again, united, its wounds healed, an America entering its third century with confidence and competence and compassion, an America that lives up to the majesty of its Constitution and the simple decency of its people. This is my vision of America. I hope you share it, and I hope you will help me fight for it.
On November 2nd, vote for Jimmy Carter.
I intend to conduct an open and above-board campaign.
I believe my candidacy will be healthy for the nation and for my party.
I was so angry and distressed and frustrated with what was going on in the White House that I was willing to do anything to change it, including run for the presidency.
I have always felt that when you see things that need to be done and feel that you can do them, you ought to try.
Undertaking this campaign, I welcome the chance to do my share.
Well, I've been in 40 states, and I've been around this country, and our campaign is moving, and I'm here today to talk to you about it.
If you elect me President of the United States,
the most extraordinary political marathon in history began with more than a dozen candidates out of the starting gate, racing to the finish line. But fate, timing, and sheer grit determination destined that one man alone was to emerge from the pack. Masterminded by then 32-year-old Hamilton Jordan. Like other members of the Carter Inner Circle, Jordan was a rural South Georgian, but no carbon copy of the born-again candidate. The Georgia Mafia was earthy, irreverent, and profane, dedicated more to a man than an ideal. Press Secretary Jody Powell was brilliant, witty, and like a son to Jimmy. Yet he was disorganized. He missed buses, forgot his briefcase, never returned phone calls. And yet this savvy band of young Carter disciples executed their presidential plans without the help of the establishment.
Well, I decided that I would run for president not too long after the 1972 convention. That was my first venture on the national scene.
I nominate as our president a great man from the state of Washington, Senator Henry Scoop Jackson.
Pas l'ange que tu espères, et mes petits mots doux ne riment à rien. Tu es toujours là quand se pointe le matin, comme un phare qui s'allumerait au loin sur la mer de tous mes chagrins.
Our strategy is public. Nothing secretive about it. Jimmy Carter has to do well outside of the South in an early primary to dispel the notion that he's a regional candidate for seeking the vice presidency. And secondly, that we have to do well inside the South against George Wallace. I'd say that other candidates don't have strategies that are meaningful. A comparable feat would be for Birchby or Morris Udall or Fred Harris to come into the South and run against us in Tennessee. They're not doing that.
J'ai toujours pensé que j'aimerais jamais. Et puis un beau jour tu arrivas. Le soleil de mai qui mourait tout grand.
Well, I interpreted this first aspect to win 2-1 over the nearest candidate was very gratifying to me.
Most of the other candidates are in the same financial posture we're in, of being dependent on those federal matching funds. The new election law, the dependence on the federal matching funds, results, we think, in 2 or 3 candidates emerging from the early primary caucus. There are 6 or 8 candidates in New Hampshire, 6 or 8 candidates in Massachusetts, and the candidate that finishes 3rd or 4th or 5th in New Hampshire turns around and runs 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th in Massachusetts will have spent all of his money, will be labeled a loser. It'll be very difficult for those candidates to continue.
Je t'aime encore tant qu'avant, même si je te le dis moins souvent. Je suis peut-être pas l'ange que tu espères.
Carter had come to the Granite State repeatedly for a year with a secret weapon, a volunteer army of 100 Georgians known as the Peanut Brigade. Armed with leaflets, peanuts, and Southern charm, they spread the gospel according to Jimmy Carter door to door.
The ballot is very complicated.
To me, Jimmy Carter, of all the people I've met, relatives, friends, business associates, those in church and those in government, is the most dishonest person I have ever known.
Savoir t'aimer un jour à la fois, juste un petit moment pour essayer de comprendre les différences qui m'éloignent de toi. Jour après jour, tu peux compter sur moi. Je t'aime encore autant qu'avant, même si je te le dis moins souvent.
Earl Butz resigned today in the aftermath of repeating a 30-year-old joke, racist and obscene, about blacks. Butz is a man with a joke for every ethnic and occupational group. He usually tells the jokes to the groups, and they laugh. This one was different. ABC's Tom Jarrell has a report from the White House.
Earl Butz played the role of a loyal soldier to the very end. Political soundings showed farmers would be less upset if he resigned than if he were fired, so Butz quit.
This is the price I pay for a gross indiscretion in a private conversation.
But there was plenty of criticism from Democrats and Republicans before Butz quit. Even the president's running mate, Senator Dole, said, "You've got to be an idiot to say something like that." Sam Donaldson found that Jimmy Carter's main gripe was that President Ford didn't act as soon as the whole business came out.
Jimmy Carter got the news about Earl Butz only moments before he arrived in Denver. But not surprisingly, Carter didn't need much time to think about it. Mr. Ford, he said, had mishandled the whole affair.
And I believe that the way this whole embarrassing and disgusting episode was handled by President Ford shows a continuation of lack of leadership. Instead of making his decision based on what was right and best for the country, he very carefully waited until he assessed public opinion polls to see what was right politically. And when the political pressure got so great on him from his own people, then he finally accepted Earl Butz's resignation. I think he should have done it immediately.
At a downtown rally, Carter told the crowd the good news, as he put it. Earl Butz was out, then proceeded to hammer away at President Ford's alleged failure as a leader. By contrast, Carter said he would dust off Harry Truman's old sign.
If you elect me president, there's going to be a sign on the desk in the Oval Office, and it's going to say, "The buck stops here." And when our country makes a mistake, I'll be responsible. Somebody's got to lead this nation. Now nobody's leading, our country's drifting, and we've got to stop that drift. You help me and we'll stop it.
Going into the first debate with the Playboy interview dragging along behind him, Carter was clearly on the defensive. But now the tables have turned. As he heads west to prepare for the second round, it is Carter who has the psychological advantage. Thanks to the Earl Butz affair, it is Carter who is on the attack.
I'm going to tell you something funny. I'm not reading this off any paper. Of course, you know that, because you know me. I'm talking right from here. It's the only way I know. I like Gerald Ford. I don't know who you like. But most of all, he has something I like very much in every human being: simplicity and honesty. Because I really believe he's an honest man. That's why I like Gerald Ford. And that's why I hope that, I don't know, please think about it. It's so important. It really is.
Jimmy Carter, who has enough delegates pledged to win the Democratic presidential nomination, met today with the first of at least 5 potential running mates. Carter's visitor in Plains, Georgia, was Senator Edmund Muskie of Maine, twice governor of his state, the vice presidential candidate in 1968, a contender for the nomination in 1972. Sam Donaldson has details on today's meeting.
Jimmy Carter and Ed Muskie walked the streets of Plains today. They did not exactly walk alone. But then the business part of the visit, the 3 or 4 hours of private talk about the vice presidency, had already taken place. Now Carter was introducing Muskie to the tourists. Muskie happy to oblige all requests for pictures. Carter displaying his campaign style. Muskie discreetly hanging back so as not to risk hogging the spotlight. Both men inspecting the suddenly becrutched Jody Powell, Carter's press secretary. who sprained his ankle while leaping for a football. Finally, as Muskie departed from the grass airstrip outside of town, the two saying nice things about each other to reporters without making any firm commitments.
Tell us about your meeting. The governor, never having been in Washington, I found, has a deep interest in how he can best develop a relationship, a productive and constructive relationship with the Congress.
Senator, may we assume that if you are asked, you would accept?
Well, my view of this is that I don't make any decisions until the governor has made a decision.
Governor, may we assume that Senator Muskie leaves here not eliminated in your mind?
Well, that's certainly right, yes. I will wait until after, as I say, another week, at least before I make up my mind. But there's been a very good relationship between us, and I don't think there's any incompatibility at all, but I just want to keep an open mind about the future, and so does Senator Muskie.
One down, at least 4 more to go. Of such drama is the vice presidential nomination made. But what else is there for the Democratic Convention?
The delegates are gone. The hall is being emptied of its millions of dollars worth of equipment. The 1976 Democratic Convention is history. Jimmy Carter is now officially his party's candidate for president, and today he got down to work. Sam Donaldson reports.
The morning after can sometimes be simply awful, but not this morning after for Jimmy Carter and Walter Mondale. Breakfast with the Democratic National Committee was full of excitement and good humor. Carter jokingly complaining that Mondale's acceptance speech last night had upstaged his own.
I was getting ready to make my speech, and I was sitting there, in a way, hoping that Fritz would foul up his own speech to make me look good. And the longer he spoke and the more the crowd responded and the more incisive his analyses were and the more fervent the response, the worse I felt.
We've been drifting too long. We've been dormant too long. We've been discouraged too long. And we have not set an example for our own people, but I believe that we can now establish in the White House a good relationship with Congress, a good relationship with our people, set very high goals for our country, and with inspiration and hard work, we can achieve great things. And let the world know, that's very important. But more importantly, let the people in our own country realize that we still live in the greatest nation on earth.
I love America just as all of you love America. It would be the highest honor for me to have your support on November 2nd and for you to say, Jerry Ford, you've done a good job. Keep on doing it. Thank you and good night.
It's 6 o'clock. Eyewitness News with Bob Jordan, Lee Watson, Steve Adams, and the Eyewitness News team.
Hi, everybody. Here's what's happening today. Across America, voters are turning out in record numbers to select a president, a new Congress, 33 new senators, 14 governors, and they're turning out, of course, to decide the fate of thousands of local races and state issues as well.
Jimmy Carter flashed his familiar smile when he arrived at the small polling center in Plains. I feel confident, Carter said. I think we've adequately presented myself to the American people, and I'm perfectly willing to abide by their judgment. Carter took a full 5 minutes to vote. When asked who he voted for, Carter grinned and replied, for Walter Mondale and his running mate. The president and Betty Ford were up with dawn. There was a morning motorcade from the hotel to the elementary school in the president's home district of Grand Rapids, where the two voted. Mr. Ford seemed optimistic but relaxed. I feel very good, he told reporters. November 2nd is going to be a good day. The president will test that prediction tonight in Washington, where he, Betty, and his family will watch the vote come in.
The
Founding Fathers came up with the idea for an electoral college. Some say the framers of the Constitution didn't think the general public was smart enough to handle it. It's since been questioned, debated, and called a lot of names. But despite all that, the electoral college has the final say about who's president, and they could go against the popular majority vote.
Good evening again. I'm Harry Reasoner, here with Barbara Walters and Howard K. Smith. Right now, at this stage of the election night, a little after 10 o'clock in New York, 29% of the precincts in this country have reported, and Jimmy Carter holds a 52% to 48% lead over Gerald Ford in the popular vote, 12.5 million to 11.75 million. Howard has a new projection on one of our states, I believe.
State of Louisiana. ABC News projects that Carter has captured Louisiana by a comfortable margin. That comes to me as a surprise, partly because I've lived there a lot of my life, was born there. It's a very conservative state, the most unpredictable one. It's voted Republican or the third party candidates for a long time. And the governor was lukewarm for Carter. His wife was outright for Ford, so it's a surprise, but we'll talk about that later.
Right now, that in the electoral vote column, according to our projections, means that Jimmy Carter has now accumulated 197 electoral votes out of the 270 needed for nomination, or for election, and Gerald Ford has 61. Noting, as we have throughout the evening, that it was expected that Jimmy Carter would have the early lead in electoral votes, and that doesn't necessarily mean it won't be a close night. In fact, all indications are it will be a close night.
Well, the reason I'm rocking, Harry, is because that's the only way to keep warm. And as you can see, the crowd that Jimmy Carter drew here earlier this evening is staying on. Indeed, Plains is about 10 times its normal population just now. And they're choosing to accept every ray of hope as an absolute definite omen that their man will win. I have with me Billy Carter, the man's brother, and his eyes are a little red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but aside from that, how you doing, Billy?
Doing fine, Jim. I thought I told you earlier, tomorrow's a national holiday in Plains for Carter's Warehouse, Carter's Farm, Carter's Service Station. We're closing down. It's paid holiday for everybody here. Because Jimmy Carter's going to be the next president, no doubt about it.
You're pretty sure of that?
I'm sure of it. It's better every minute.
Billy, what about this crowd?
I think it's a great crowd. How in the hell they got the Plains, I'll never know, but they're here.
Come from several other states, of course, but are you interested now in seeing about what plans can be made for Plains' future in the event this all comes about?
I would like to be, but I think Plains is already going to hell. I'm going to let it go.
Okay, well, you heard it straight from the man. He runs a filling station and the warehouse and all the rest of it. You'll just have to check with him later. Jim Kincaid in Plains, Georgia.
Thank you, Jim. Plains, I think, would take either victory or defeat calmly tonight. It's a town that is pretty hard to shake up.
We have some very interesting analysis here of some of the key groups in the population who voted very differently tonight from the way they have in the past. First, two that didn't. The black vote now is firmed up to an 81 to 17 point Carter lead. That is substantial. They didn't turn out in bigger numbers, but gave him a very handsome majority. The Spanish-speaking, 70 to 29%, a very big lead indeed. However, among white Catholics, we find that Ford is ahead 50 to 49%, and that's a big setback for Jimmy Carter. He just somehow never sold himself to the white Catholic group. An interesting one, and we've now got nearly all of the Jewish precincts in. Our count shows 54 to 44% for Jimmy Carter. That is not a good showing by any standard here.
It had been said earlier that if more than 55% of the vote came in, that Carter would probably win, and if less than 50, that it would go for Ford. At least that was one of the discussions that pollsters were taking. It seems now that the voter percentage has been about 56%, and that's equal to the number 4 years ago. So it hasn't been a great voter turnout, but it hasn't been very bad.
The predictions they were making at some point during the summer that would be the lowest voter turnout since Calvin Coolidge was elected in 1924 is certainly not held up.
No, Ford has got to win almost all the remaining states to make it.
Almost. 160 to 257. according to ABC's projection. Wisconsin, which is, well, I don't know whether it's leaning toward Carter or not. It's giving him a 3% lead with 72% of the precincts in, would give him 11 votes, which would bring him to 258. And then it could be either Hawaii or Oregon, or a small state could bring it.
Bill Werdum is now at Carter, at the ballroom where Carter is in Atlanta. Let's go to Bill Werdum. Bill, can you hear us?
Well, I don't know whether you can hear me here in the World Congress Center in Atlanta. There's a huge crowd, 25,000 strong, we are told, waiting here impatiently for Jimmy Carter to come in here and make what they confidently expect will be his acceptance speech. The crowd is somewhat subdued now, although you can hear music playing in the background by a rock group and a country western group that have rocked the foundations of this great hall. But as I said, the crowd is somewhat subdued because they've been here at least 6 hours. It has been a long night. It is being a long night.
With those 11 electoral votes, I think Barbara has an important announcement.
Yes, I do. In the state of Hawaii, with 4 electoral votes, those votes have gone to Carter, and that does it. ABC now projects Carter is the winner with 272 electoral votes. We had wondered which one of us was going to make this announcement. It was the one who got the last projection, and it's the 4 Hawaii votes that, on our count, has put Carter over the top. By our projection, James Earl Carter, the next president of the United States.
You know, that Hawaii vote is not surprising.
That is Miss Lillian, the 78-year-old mother of the next president, listening probably to so many well wishes, people applauding her. She has said that she will continue to live in Plains. She said earlier tonight, I'm just a hick, but she's a hick with a son who's going to be president of the United States. There she is. You can't keep Miss Lillian down for too long, though. Jimmy Carter, a woman who in her 70s became a Peace Corps worker and was 78 years young, a very happy woman tonight. She's been wearing that T-shirt, obviously, under her coat almost all of the evening. It says Jimmy Carter in 76.
Because you're my folks, and you've been with me all the time, and I'm sticking with, and who's going to stay till Jimmy comes home? Thank you. I tell you, I don't think I'll be at the White House much. But in case I am and y'all come, I'll know who you are. My granddaughter.
His biggest victory was in New York, 41 votes, and that's, of course, the state that is possibly going to be contested by the Republicans. There's been a court order issued to impound voting machines in New York City because of suspicions that there may be something wrong with them. He also took Pennsylvania with 27 votes.
In a way, that's remarkable, Harry, because the worst demonstration against Jimmy Carter was at Scranton, Pennsylvania, on the subject of abortion. So he was worried about Pennsylvania.
Well, he took Texas with 26 votes. That took a long time to come through, but in the final way that the popular vote is going there, he's winning by a strong 7% in Texas. He took Florida.
And Florida was predicted that it would go for Jimmy Carter, but it was one of those states that could have gone to Ford, and Ford sure would have wanted to have that, but As we see, it did indeed go to Carter. It is Jimmy Carter, 52-year-old Jimmy Carter, whom ABC projects as the next president of the United States, father of 3 sons and 1 daughter. We're going to see a lot of that now. 9-year-old Amy, she was 8 years old when we first began to pay very close attention to her. By 272 electoral votes, 2 more than he needed, Jimmy Carter projected as the next president of the United States. Well, Jim Kincaid has been lounging around in Plains, Georgia, having a very quiet, soft time, but I'll bet it isn't quiet and soft there right now. Jim, you're not lounging at this moment, are you?
Not at all. Miss Lillian, I suppose I don't have to ask you how you feel. You're going to tell me, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I feel wonderful. I've been through so many wins and losses tonight, I'm just sick. I'm just so glad he had last his run. Everybody here is so happy, because I'm the happiest mother in the world right now.
You've been up a long time, Miss Lillian. What do you plan to do the rest of the evening?
Go to bed, I hope. I don't know. I'm going to stay here till Jimmy comes.
Miss Lillian?
Miss Lillian, Barbara would like to ask you a question.
Yes, I'd like to ask
I don't hear a thing.
Miss Lillian, can you hear me?
I can't hear a thing.
She can't hear me. Jim,
Barbara,
can you
Miss
hear me?
Lillian is unable to hear you.
Jim, suppose I give you the question.
Okay, fine. I'll relay it.
All right. Would you ask Miss Lillian if at this point she has talked either to her son or daughter-in-law? Has she had any communication with them?
Have you talked to either Jimmy or Rosalind?
No, my sister called me about 2 hours ago and told me that Jimmy told her to call me. But said he'd be late getting home, but he said wait for him.
Do you expect to be here when he gets back?
Yes, I do.
You're going to stay down here?
Oh, yeah. If anybody does, I will. I haven't heard a thing. You hear me there?
Can't hear a thing? Well, the nation is hearing you, Miss Lillian.
Right. That's all that matters.
Perhaps we'd like to hear about your plans once your son has moved into the White House.
I love you, too. I think, well, when I'm going to stay in Plains, the rest of my life, I hope. I'm tired of traveling, and I hope I never have to help anybody else in a political race. And I won't unless it's Jimmy.
Thank you, Miss Lillian, very much. Barbara?
Thank you, Jim Kincaid. That's Miss Lillian, the 78-year-old mother of Jimmy Carter. Rosalind Carter's mother is also living. She's 70 years old. Miss Lillian has said that she's going to help her son take care of the problems of the elderly.
The scene at the old train depot in Plains, Georgia, election night, 1976, just moments after the Carter clan learns of Jimmy Carter's election. And there, another colorful member of the Carter family, Brother Billy.
One thing I can't understand about the networks, when 1% of the vote in for Ford, they predict the winner. When 93% in and Jimmy ahead, they can't predict one.
They made it stay up for a long
time.
Good evening. Shortly before dawn, Jimmy Carter reached the end of his improbable 2-year, half-million-mile political quest and won the presidency. Late in the morning, President Ford conceded Carter's victory. Bob Schieffer reports.
By 10 o'clock this morning, he had concluded it really was all over. He called Carter, and an hour and 15 minutes later, his family with him, Gerald Ford came to the White House press room to make the first concession statement of his political career.
It's perfectly obvious that my voice isn't up to par, and I shouldn't be making very many comments, and I won't. But I do want to express on a personal basis my appreciation and that of my family for the friendship that all of us have had. And after Betty reads the statement that was sent to Governor Carter by me, I think all of us, Betty, the children, and myself would like to just come down and shake hands and express our appreciation personally. Let me call on the real spokesman for the family, Betty.
It's been the greatest honor of my husband's life to have served his fellow Americans during 2 of the most difficult years in our history. The President urges all Americans to join him in giving your united support to President-elect Carter as he prepares to assume his new responsibilities. I'd like to read you the telegram the President sent to President-elect Carter this morning. Dear Jimmy, although there will continue to be disagreements over the best means to use in pursuing our goals, I want to assure you that you have my complete and wholehearted support as you take the oath of office this January. I also pledge to you that I and all members of my administration will do all that we can to assure that you begin your term as smoothly and as effectively as possible. May God bless you and your family as you undertake your new responsibilities. Signed, Jerry Ford. Thank you very much.
In January, Mrs. Ford says they will return to their home in the Virginia suburbs where they lived before Mr. Ford became the first unelected president. Bob Schieffer, CBS News, the White House.
And in January, the Jimmy Carters of Plains, Georgia will move into the White House. But Plains still is home, and it was there the man who will be the 39th president headed with his victory. Ed Bradley reports.
Any way you looked at it, it was a long night. And by the time the Carter campaign returned to Albany, Georgia, 9-year-old Amy was asleep in her father's arms. But the president-elect's hometown was wide awake. And Billy Carter was at the head of the line saying to his brother, "I guess I can still call you Jimmy." They'd been up all day and partied in the street all night. And if ever there was a hometown boy who grew up, made good, and never forgot the home folks, it was Jimmy Carter. And if ever there was a mother proud of her son, it had to be Miss Lillian. And at this proudest time in his life, Jimmy Carter was home again in this almost make-believe town with people who have meant so much to him.
I came all the way through 22 months, and I didn't get choked up until I... Until I turned the corner and saw you standing here, and I said, people that are that foolish, we could get beat, right?
Through the long night, the Carter staff had remained confident, but their apprehension and concern grew as his electoral vote total stood for hours just short of a majority. Across the street at the World Congress Center, 25,000 people inside and another 15,000 outside had celebrated all night, but it was nothing compared to the moment of victory. During the campaign, Carter was a candidate who made few excuses, but back home in Plains, he generously shared his success and apologized for the long evening.
I had the best organization any candidate ever had. Had the best family any candidate ever had. Had the best home community any candidate ever had. Had the best supporters in my home state any candidate ever had. And the only reason we were close last night was because the candidate wasn't quite good enough as a campaigner. But I'll make up for that when I'm president.
In his first official act after acknowledging victory, Carter returned to the now familiar train depot to thank Mr. Ford for his statement of congratulations and offer of cooperation.
One of the very first tasks facing any new president is the unification of our country after a close and hard-fought election. President Ford's characteristically gracious statement today will make that job much easier for me.
Jimmy Carter's major concern now is the transition, In the typical Carter blueprint, his transition staff has been working since the Democratic convention on this changeover in government. They've compiled a long list of people to be considered for cabinet and other positions, and Carter campaign manager Hamilton Jordan said there will be a lot of new faces in Washington. Some of them will be experienced with well-known names, but most will be people you've probably never heard of.
It's clear that the true problems of our nation are much deeper than gasoline lines or energy shortages, deeper even than inflation or recession. So I want to speak to you first tonight about a subject even more serious than energy or inflation. I want to talk to you right now about a fundamental threat to American democracy. Is nearly invisible in ordinary ways. It is a crisis of confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. In a nation that was proud of hard work, strong families, close-knit communities, and our faith in God, too many of us now tend to worship self-indulgence and consumption. Human identity is no longer defined by what one does, but by what one owns. This is not a message of happiness or reassurance, but it is the truth, and it is a warning.
That's gotta be it. That's gotta be it. That's gotta be it. You might not see you again because I have to go home pretty soon.
No, I won't see you because I'm going to leave real early in the morning.
All right. You gonna stay at home?
I hope so. I ain't been to bed since Saturday night.
I won't see you.
Okay, but I'll see you when I get back. I love you too. Be sweet. How you feel? Good to meet you. Hey, NBC over here.
All three were emotional, but they weren't sad. Every single one of them, including coming back to Georgia, is a happy experience for me, and I thank God for it. They are prisoners no more, and they are coming back.
call to you underneath my breath, my tongue so tied no words come out. To the heavens here, I need you.